this video, we're going to discuss ways that you can design your questionnaire to make it usable and accessible and easy to read for your respondents. We're going to recognize some guidelines for designing surveys, focusing on 4 visual design elements and 4 visual design properties. When you design your questionnaire, you need to have the first few questions in the survey easy and interesting in order to calm any participant's suspicions about the survey's integrity. This allows the participants to build up confidence in the survey's objective, and in return, this may stimulate their interest in overall participation in your survey. You never start a survey with demographic questions. You always leave that information to the last part of your survey because it's so personal. Start off with more general ideas about their attitudes toward teaching, their interest in the topic, their knowledge of the topic, the resources they need, and then build up to more intense questions, and then finish with the demographic questions. After you establish your first general topic, all related questions should come up before a second topic's raised. It's a really good idea to use pages in your online design and Qualtrics to house each section of your survey. Here you can raise one topic on one page and include the instructions and the information for that section in the page description area. And when you are ready to introduce a new topic, you create a new page, you include that page's description and purpose, and ask those questions. Conditional or skip logic questions are also a good way to control the respondent's flow or route through a survey. You can apply questions or page skip logic to a survey when you want to guide respondents and exclude them from certain pages of questions that do not apply to them. Don't make them answer things that are not relevant to them, or they will lose interest and exit out of your survey. Some suggest that sensitive questions should not be included at the beginning of the survey. However, there's no set rule for this, but if you do include sensitive questions at the beginning of the survey, then you may run the respondents rejecting the survey and exiting early. They may not have built up the confidence yet in the survey's integrity quite so early, and questions like demographics or personal information are usually best to introduce toward the end of the survey. That way the respondents are likely to have already developed confidence, they know more about the purpose of your study, what you're asking, and they're going to be more willing to offer information that they feel is a little more invasive, like their income, the years of teaching experience, the school district they teach at, the county they work in for extension, the number of students they've mentored. Those are all really good things to maybe ask toward the end. Survey questionnaires include 4 types of visual design elements that communicate meaning to respondents: words, numbers, symbols, and graphics. Words are the most powerful source of meaning, and the respondents draw upon them when answering survey questions. But numbers are used in the question stem, in instructions, and in the labels for answer choices, and that also communicate additional meaning. Symbols can be used to add special meaning, often without occupying very much visible space in the questionnaire. For example, an arrow may communicate to respondents where to focus their attention to next. Finally, graphics like text boxes, check boxes, radio buttons, shaded backgrounds are another type of visual design element that can be used in designing survey questions. In addition, graphics can include more complex images and logos that layer various elements together. And the use of these types of graphics has increased, particularly in web surveys, because it's easy and affordable to include them, but also in paper surveys because the cost of printing them has decreased. Each of the 4 visual design elements, words, numbers, symbols, and graphics, can be presented in different ways. They can be large or small, light or dark, close to one another or far apart, static or in motion, like a video or GIF, grayscale or in color, Thus, in addition to using the 4 types of visual design elements, researchers can also manipulate the properties of these elements to increase or decrease the attention given to them and to change the meaning respondents assign to them. So visual design properties include size, font, brightness, contrast, color, and location or proximity. So for example, attention can be drawn to particular words, numbers, or symbols by changing their font size, the contrast, the color, in relation to the surrounding text, bolding or italicizing an important word or phrase in a question stem. A dollar sign could remind respondents to report their income in dollars. Symbols can also be located in proximity to an answer space where respondents will need to use them at the time of the response. Even a well-worded question can be difficult for respondents to process if it's not designed in a legible way. So enhancing legibility means choosing an appropriate font size, font type, and line length. One should avoid script fonts because they're really hard to read. Instead, serif or sans serif fonts should be used. Serif fonts have added detail or serifs at the end of their strokes that make the structure of the letters, like Times New Roman. In contrast, sans serif fonts do not have the added details, such as Arial. Although both serif and sans serif fonts work well on paper, sans serif fonts are commonly preferred for web surveys because they're more readable than the serif fonts, especially on low resolution monitors or on small phones. One additional point to keep in mind about fonts for web surveys is that the font to display, it has to be installed on the user's computer. So if the user does not have the correct font installed, a browser will default to a font that the user does have, usually in the same font family, so maybe Arial, not Arial Bold. For this reason, it is advisable to stick to really common fonts that nearly all users have, like Calibri or Arial. To some degree, the font size one chooses depends on your population age or your survey population. So a good rule of thumb is to use 10-point or 12-point font for most populations. But larger fonts are better for older populations, like 14 or 16-point font to make it easier to read. An additional consideration for web surveys is that the font preferences are often set on a user's computer, giving the designer little to no control. And additionally, font sizes appear different on a screen than on paper, and the same font size may appear larger or smaller depending on factors like the user's screen resolution or the zoom in and zoom out features they use to read text. Use darker and or larger print for the question stem, and then lighter or smaller print for your answer choices or your answer space. Another way to encourage respondents to answer in a way that's desirable is to discourage them from providing invalid answers. Is to appropriately size the answer space for the type of information desired. So for example, the best response to a descriptive open-ended question will contain considerable detail and elaboration. That means your respondents are going to need a large essay space to write. If you just want them to be able to fill in their age, they're going to need a much smaller space. So just make your answer spaces and response options readable and think about the character length that's needed to provide the response. You also want to make sure that they're using the same font and that they are consistently the same design. So it's really easy to say, hey, I know what I have to do because that looks the exact same thing as I've done earlier in this survey. For example, use each visual design element for only one purpose. White square boxes are only used to answer spaces and type in answers. The radio buttons are round, only forced choice where you have one answer. A square box, select all that apply, meaning they can select more than one answer. Every single visual design has only one purpose. Lastly, you want to use space to help create subgroupings within a question. Dillman suggests placing more space between questions than between their subcomponent parts or answer choices to help make it clear where the question group ends and the next question begins. Additionally, he recommends indenting answer choices or response categories underneath the question stem. This format helps respondents to easily establish a hierarchy where they first process the question, then the categories, before moving on to the next question. And the indentation will help make it very obvious where one question ends and the next one begins. We can't emphasize enough the effective use of blank space in a questionnaire for helping respondents organize information on the page, group like information together, and make sure it flows nicely on a mobile device, on a tablet, and on a laptop and desktop computer so it's easy to answer. You want to avoid clutter on your pages. That's why white space is also helpful. Here's an example on the page right here where it says, what is your sex? And then indented in, male, female, prefer not to answer. What is your age? They can type in the age, and that will make that easy too. And it lets them know it's just a real simple answer like 62, 74, 85, 19. And it's not a long response that you want. If you want to know more about great design, I really recommend Dillman's book, Internet, Phone, Mail, and Mixed Mode Surveys, the Tailored Design Method. He has great ideas for how to design your surveys that will make it visually pleasing online through something like Qualtrics, but also on paper. If you have any questions or comments about survey design, please contact me through Canvas inbox or kelsey.hall@usu.edu. Thank you.